Okay, so since it's just the four of us here, no, that was Councilwoman Sandra Vincent. Someone is waiting and no, meeting is now streaming. Never mind. You know, PR, you gotta give us a thumbs up.
You understand, exactly.
You were saying that was Sandra Vincent?
Yeah, but we're on YouTube, so I'll have to say it when we're off.
No, it says recording paused.
It says live on YouTube.
Okay, so we are live.
And we did not take care of we did not get a visa to the Smart Island. I need to call Dr. Nelson. That was where you got to make your animated. She was supposed to send me the information, but she never did, so I can share it with everyone.
Okay.
Yeah, so.
This recording,
It says live on YouTube.
yeah, but nobody's seeing it because I unlisted it.
Okay,
Right.
so you haven't, okay. So
Usually,
you're gonna edit all of the extras.
no. What I usually
We
do,
did not take care of
hold
we
on.
did not get a visa to
The thing is
Smart
talking
Island.
in the background, so hold on.
I need to call Dr. Nelson. That was where you got to make your animated. She was supposed to send me the information, but she never did, so I can share it with you. Okay. Yeah, so. This recording, it says live on
Why does it do that? I noticed Dr. Nelson was having the same issue, that the recording would start playing.
Okay, now the recording is not for like Facebook Live or anything like that. The recording is just for Zoom. So what I usually do is pause it because I know we log on early, and then when it's time to start, I usually start it back. But it would record either way in YouTube or Facebook or what have you. But I remember you saying you wanted the interaction, so that's why I was asking on the other end. But nobody will see you all right now. I just wanted to. Sometimes it takes a minute to load up in YouTube. So here I have the link, and I'll share it whenever you guys closer to the time.
Okay. So while we're in the meeting, I want to be able to interact on Facebook and YouTube.
Yeah.
So I have mine up. Just waiting to see when it goes live.
What happens is, you see, like when you guys are in chat and you're chatting to everyone, shows on YouTube.
Didn't realize that, even if it's private.
If it's private, no.
Because Garfield told me the other day when I was talking private to someone, I was sending someone a private message, Kalia, for the Dear Daddy Day. He's like, oh, we're seeing what you're saying and it's interrupting. And I was like, but I'm doing it private.
The private one should not show.
Yeah, you said the private was showing.
Well, always test it out.
Okay. So then when I clicked on my drop down in communication, I think it says when I go to chat, it says something of either private, public, some on top of that when it's in the chat. I can't remember.
Or you can select the name of the person you want to send it to, or you can select.
Yes, you can.
No, I had selected Kalia, but he said for whatever reason he said like right now. Okay, so I'm Olinda, so it says private to Olinda. So he said that everyone was seeing it. Christine, is there any way, because I was trying to upload it, but for whatever reason it was telling me I wasn't able to upload the logo, that it was either too big. Is there a way that we can upload the logo, but so when it shows up, it doesn't show my name? Like on YouTube, it's showing my name, but that it just shows the CAG logo.
You'd have to change who is the licensed party. So the licensed party would have to be CAG.
Okay, so Olinda, what time is the individuals from NAMNI, what time are they coming on? I think it's,
Um, I don't know. I mean, originally we just told everybody 3 o'clock, so um, three o'clock, I suppose.
okay.
I saw James was registered. I didn't see where any Dr. Sarenka or anyone else or the other lady, if she was able, if she registered or not. I didn't see her as registered. So
Okay, so pretty much I would, if it's just you, I will go ahead and introduce you. Well, say a little bit about CAG, and then I'll introduce you as someone, and I'll still state the disclosure and the disclaimer, just so
mhm.
that everyone understands confidentiality and that, to be mindful because it's being videotaped. Being recorded.
And I thought you guys were gonna tell them at the end that they can, we'll turn off the thing.
Yeah, for
Yeah,
like
we'll
a
turn it off, what, 30 minutes prior to?
yeah, I
About,
guess we can see too how how many people show up if the conversation leads into something more private. If we're having more people want to be more
so
share
should we ask
more.
them to hold those conversation until about 4:30 when we'll go private?
Um, no, I think we could just remind them that we will go private if there's more, if you want to talk in more detail afterwards. Let people share what they feel comfortable sharing. I mean, because I'm more comfortable sharing a lot of stuff compared to other people. So,
Yeah. And then if, I guess, well, you'll be the one are you doing both the communication on here and on Facebook as well, or are you just doing Facebook?
I'll hop on all of them off and on just to see what's going on in the middle of a
Okay.
conversation while you may be talking to others or whatever, and
Okay.
just see. Christine, what's this link? We can't hear you.
Oh, hold on a minute. Hold on.
Oh, that's the live?
Yeah, that's a live link.
Okay.
So I'll make it public in a few minutes, like 5 minutes still.
Mm-hmm. I'll bring it up. I
So I
never
feel like,
realized I make so many faces.
huh?
I'm always making faces. I never
You're less.
realized that.
I didn't realize them either. I'm like, oh my, I have a pout mouth. And my mouth pouted so bad with my first son that he came out with a pout mouth. If his baby picture came out like this. about to get really,
Get what? What's wrong?
somebody's been verbally abusing my stepmom on Facebook.
Oh,
I'm about to
goodness.
reach out and touch them and tell them Jesus love them real hard. Okay. I need to find my notification because this stuff is always going on.
I can't figure out how to get my, I tried mirroring, but my island still turned the wrong way.
Mine doesn't work at all.
Oh. I didn't want to have to recreate it.
And mine is like Christine's. It just comes out blurry. Tell these kids to keep it down.
So, Mr. Garth, you gonna chime in the conversation today? You're muted.
You're live.
And we are live.
And welcome to our Caribbean Mental Health Forum. Hi, everyone. This is Samantha Samuels, the president of the Caribbean Association of Georgia. And we are excited to be here with you to have this, discussion about mental health in our community. And so just to give you a little background of who we are, Caribbean Association of Georgia is a nonprofit organization, and we are a humanitarian organization. What we do really, we do a lot of humanitarian stuff. We feed the soldiers, we feed the homeless, we do toy giveaways. We normally have our festival, which would have been last weekend, but of course, we are all in a pandemic. So we are doing everything live on Zoom, which has been great. If you want to learn more about our organization, go to caribbeangeorgia.org to get more information. I'm truly excited because I am joined with the VP below, Mr. Garth Hinton. You could just wave your hand. And our secretary, Olinda Ricard Hodge. And what we're gonna, and our PR person, Christine. She's not showing her face. Um, and so what we're going to talk about today is what we've is mental health. And today it's all about the lived experience, someone who has gone through some sort of mental challenges, whether it be through trauma or whatever it is just to say, let's have a discussion about these things in our community so we can help someone else. And, so people don't feel uncomfortable talking about the challenges that they face. And so without further ado, I'm going to go ahead and introduce. And so before we do that, let's just a disclaimer. This is being recorded live. So any information that is shared on here will be live, except for the last 30 minutes. So if you haven't joined and you want to come on to get involved in this conversation, go ahead and get on or zoom in on Facebook or YouTube, correct? Yes, Facebook or YouTube. You can zoom in, you can even Olinda will actually be engaging you in conversation on Facebook, right? And YouTube. Yes.
Yes, I'll do my best.
Okay, so let us get started. Like I said again, my name is Samantha Samuels. I am the president of the Caribbean Association of Georgia. I'm truly excited to bring this as one of our initiatives, which is mental health in our community, to get rid of the stigma. When as soon as people hear mental health, what do they think about in the Caribbean community? We want to get rid of that stigma and to make this aware to say we've all have some struggles and challenges with mental health. And so today is all about your lived experience, individuals who want to talk about their lived experience. And so, like myself, it's just this year that I came out and said, no, I want to talk about my lived experience struggling with anxiety, and how I overcame that. For me, it was a spiritual journey, it was a spiritual walk for me. And so that's what, brought me to this place, and why I see that it's so essential to speak about mental health in the community, in the churches, because it's a stigma and no one wants to talk about it. Without further ado, I am going to go ahead and allow Olinda to introduce herself and tell you a little bit about who she is and her story.
Well, thank you. Again, my name is Olinda Ricard Hodge. I am a Caribbean American. My mother is from Trinidad and my father is from Louisiana. They both met in the Army in Killeen, which is where I was born. I've traveled a lot and experienced a lot from living with different family members in the Caribbean and in the US. So my experience with mental health is pretty broad. So I've seen it, what it looks like in the Caribbean and some of the stigmas and the way people are treated. And I've also seen it here. But I actually am a certified peer specialist, which means I choose to use my personal experience with mental health to share my story, to try to give hope to others, to let people know that you can live what most like to say is a normal life. And you can learn to manage your symptoms and even learn to reduce the symptoms. For me, I experienced a lot of childhood trauma, and most of that is what led me to have suffered from depression and PTSD. I've also experienced as an adult sexual trauma as an adult. So that just compounded the situation, which also ended up leading me to have multiple suicide attempts. And I continue to struggle. The struggle isn't as hard because I've gotten a lot of coping skills under my belt. I've learned to identify certain warning signs within myself. If there's certain things that I'm not doing that I know would help me with my own self-care, I can identify that, and then I can figure out, well, you need to tighten up. You need to do the things you know you should be doing to keep yourself calm, to alleviate some of the anxiety and some of the depression and isolation, which is common and typical when I go into that state of despair, really. Mental health is not really something that was discussed in my family, but it exists. It exists. Mental health issues do exist in my family. And unfortunately, in the Caribbean community, a lot of times people decide not to go to the hospital. They don't go to the doctor. They may not even recognize what they're experiencing as a mental health issue. They just think that that's just the way, that's just the way I am. My family was like that. My grandmother was like that. So, there's nothing wrong. But I've learned to get all the help I can. So I'm all for people choosing what type of what they think is best for them, whether or not they need to go to a counselor or take medication. But I would say to first explore those areas, try it first and see if it works for you, instead of just making a decision like, no, I'm not going to go to a doctor. I'm not going to go to a therapist. I'm not going to take medication, because you may find that those are the things that you need, and you may not always need them. You may just need them for a while until the chemicals in your body, stabilize, and maybe you can eventually wean off of medication, which has been the case for me, but yeah, so I don't know what else I should at this time, but that's pretty much who I am. I do this work in the community. I also do suicide prevention work and training, and work with young people who have survived suicide attempts to try to help them build more coping skills and let them know that they're not alone, that others, can relate to what they have gone through.
Awesome, Olinda, awesome. One of the things that I really admire about you is how bold you are about sharing your story, and that, and in the essence of stigma, of course, we know that the stigma. So once you come out and you say, this is what I struggled with, or, you share your story, some people, especially in the Caribbean community, or even in the African American community, knowing that you came from both, your mom is from Trinidad, you said, and your dad is from Louisiana. So even in the African community, mental health, people have a tendency to shy away or shun you. What made you wanted to come out and said, what, I want to share my story to help others?
I think what happened for me when I realized that it was something that would be beneficial was when I was going to counseling, but I never really felt that the counseling helped, because the counselors really didn't seem like they could relate. They can do their job, they can ask you questions to try to get you to come to some decisions, but I wasn't having any kind of connection with them. So it wasn't until I was put into a group for depression and trauma, women's depression and trauma group, that I began to share with the other ladies, and those ladies were also sharing their experiences. And we all had different types of mental health issues. There were some who had bipolar, schizophrenic, some individuals had substance use issues, others had depression, but the common thread for all of us was that we had experienced some form of trauma. And when I started sharing it in that group, I started to feel better, because others were actually listening. And when they would share their stories, I felt like, oh my gosh, she really understands me, or we would give each other some tips and tools of what has helped us. And that really opened my eyes that this could be beneficial. So that happened here when I moved to Georgia. I've been here for 10 years. And then I learned of the Georgia Mental Health Consumer Network, which trains individuals to be able to support other people. And you can also get, you can be employed as a certified peer specialist. So to me, that was the best of both worlds. Here I am, I can just, because everyone's an expert in their own life. No one can tell me about me and how I feel, what's going on in my mind. So I'm getting paid to be an expert, to share my story, what I know better than anyone else. And of course, it's from my perspective, but I mean, who can really challenge you on your perspective?
Exactly. Yeah.
Right.
Exactly. Yeah. Because it's your story.
Mhm.
It's your story. I'm not sure what I saw. Oh, I saw something on, like a clip on Facebook, and this young lady sharing her story. And, she's on this, I guess, one of those like idol shows or things like that. She wrote a song for her husband, who is her husband now, that's paralyzed from the waist down. But I just thought of, what? Behind every person, there is a story. Every one of us have a story to tell, each and every one of us. And so many people are living in a shadow and living in this fear. And so they're afraid to share their story. But who else, like you said, yeah, it is your story. And based on your story, someone else can say, oh, like you, when you went to that group and said, oh, actually, this makes me feel more better because now I can relate, or someone else can relate to me. Now, let's get to this before we go any further. Mr.
Mhm.
Gard, do you want to chime in? I know you're here for moral support. Do you want to chime in at all? Are you?
Not yet.
Not yet. Okay. So let's get rid of this myth about mental health. Because when people think of mental health in the Caribbean community, you're crazy, you're mad, you need to. For me, I am from Guyana, as you can see the flag back there. And in Guyana, is that when they said that, oh Lord, this person crazy, they need to go to the madhouse. Meaning there's this, I've never seen the house, I've never seen, it's a hospital, but is that they just take people who have some type of illness and they just put them in there and just, that's it. They have no life, they cannot be a part of society to some extent because they feel endangered. Let's get rid of that myth of what is mental health.
Well, mental health, I think one of the issues is that people think about, they don't realize just as you have physical health, you have mental health. So we all have mental, some stage or form of mental health. The issue people have is mental illness. People are afraid of what that may mean, what that may look like, what others may think about them. But a lot of times people don't realize that trauma is an underlying issue for many people's mental health struggles. So a lot of times when people have mental health struggles, they have experienced some form of trauma. There are those who may be born with defects. There are those who may have used some sort of substance, drugs, that has created them to go into psychosis and maybe never recover from that. But more and more research is showing that people are having these experiences of mental illness due to trauma. And then a lot of times once someone has a mental illness, they end up experiencing more trauma through rejection, isolation, and even when they're taken to a mental health hospital, unfortunately, in many cases, they're abused in some ways and disrespected. So we have to acknowledge that just like any other illness, if someone has cancer, if someone has, they didn't give it to themselves. So a person doesn't give themselves a mental illness. There's different circumstances and issues that can create these things for people. And out of this discussion, I really want people to just be a little more compassionate and understanding. And especially if you have children in your life that are doing things that seem to be strange, to start asking some questions. start considering that maybe there's something going on with that child behind the scenes that you're unaware of, and not making assumptions about, oh, they're just being rude, they don't like to
Yes.
listen.
Exactly. Yeah.
You know, yeah, I mean, a lot of times the kids that are acting out in class, acting out in school, that can't stay focused, there may be something else going
Something
on.
else.
It's,
Yeah.
you know, and they're distracting themselves and they're crying out for help, but they don't have the words, again, language, they don't have the words to articulate that something's going on.
Yeah.
Um,
And,
so
and that's especially sometimes when it comes to, you know, I saw on the Guyana news yesterday, someone posted that a young lady, she looked probably about the age of 15, you know, she was missing. They found her, thank God. But I just think of, you know, what her parents would think if she probably just ran away or whatever it is, would they even take the time to find out what happened? Why did you do what you do? Or will they just completely, maybe, you know, scream and yell at her and, you know, and just make her feel worse and make her feel bad about herself? Because pretty much in the Caribbean, no one listens to you, you know, especially as a child. I remember I didn't like adults. I'll be very honest. I did not like adults. I didn't like adults for the mere fact that adults didn't listen.
mhm.
Like all they did was they tell you what to do. And then they want to beat you for it. Then they tell you not to cry about it. Why are you crying? Then if you don't cry, you're too grown. Oh, so I'm gonna beat you some more. And it's like this confusing mythology was like, oh my gosh, you know, tell me the difference between, you know, just narrow down, if you could narrow down in one sentence to two, the difference between mental health and mental illness. And then I'll go into the 8 dimensions right after that.
Yeah. So mental health is what we all have. Mental illness, it's exactly what it is. It's an illness. It's a state of being that's not healthy, that's not normal, that there's something that's wrong there, whether it's chemical, whether it's brought on by something else. It's something, it's just like any other disease. You can eventually alleviate all your symptoms depending on what the disease is, or it may be a lifelong struggle or challenge that you have to figure out what works for you. You know, like with any other disease, all treatments do not work for everyone. You know, so you have to really find what works for you.
Now, you know, Caribbean people, because as soon as you say disease, they're going to say, wait a minute, I don't have no disease. What is some other word? What is another word that we can use that's relatable to the Caribbean community?
Well, you know, all the harsh ones that has been used, like somebody's meaning paranoid, you know. We don't want to use those, you know, somebody's mad as a madman or crazy man. You know, you don't want to really use those type of terms. So I think I'm always comfortable saying someone has a mental health challenge. You know, I don't even use the word illness. When I refer to myself, I just say it's a challenge. You know, because it's something I'm actively working towards getting better. So
Yeah.
I don't know. What do you think? What do you think?
You know, one of the things for me is that I'm doing currently in getting my master's in mental health and wellness with, you know, focused on family dynamics. And one of the things that I learned in there was about the 8 dimensions, and the 8 dimensions of wellness, and it's mental health and wellness. And what it consists of is the emotional, financial, social, spiritual, occupational, physical, intellectual, and environmental. Meaning that if, kind of like we're in this COVID period right now, some people have lost their job. That caused some mental challenge because you're excessively thinking about it now. Now, when your life was, you know, you had a balanced life, you know, you're going up every day, you going to work, you sending the kids to school, you know, you prepping dinner, you doing this, you doing that. I remember I just came back from Guyana and I had this plan. We all probably did. But then we were told abruptly, with no plan in place, you need to shut everything down. And we need to, do I hear a dog? And we need to shut everything down and we need to just stay inside. And had my husband not warned me, because he said, oh, you know, I think we need to get some groceries and this and that. And I said, we don't need to. I said, listen, I don't have time for that. Had he not like insist, and he normally wouldn't, but he's like, no, I think this thing is really serious. We probably just need to go and buy some food and da 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 da. I probably would not have been prepared. Well, I wasn't prepared with a sanitizer and toilet tissue. But the mental health and wellness, the 8 dimensions, what it means, it disrupt our lives. Now you don't have this normalcy of living. So it's causing, so your normal state, now you're causing anxiety because now I've lost my job. Now things weren't put in place where the mortgage company, if you're a homeowner, to some extent you're okay for maybe 3 months. But then you have, you know, they said, oh yes, we'll not, you don't have to pay now, but you have to pay it all full 3 months from now. So if you didn't have the money now, you didn't have 1 month rent now, or 1 month mortgage now, or 1 month light bill now, 1 month water bill, how can you pay full in 3 months? You have to pay it all. Where are you getting that? That because of mental health. That causes some mental stress. That's going into some severity beyond your normal anxiety, beyond your normal way of thinking. And so that's what it is that, you know, and then your life is not it's not about balance, but it's not proportion right enough. And that's what the 8 dimension is. And I'm trying to see if I can share it with you all so you can see what that looks like. But that's pretty much what it is. And it's just really, you're not, you know, emotionally, spiritually, think, you know, I'm spiritual. I'm a God-fearing person, and I would never deny my faith. For me, I didn't realize that I struggled with anxiety, that it was becoming that severe. I just figured I was having, like you said, Olinda, earlier, you know, you just feel, oh, I'll just get over it. But there was a certain time that I would just blow up severely and just really, or if something is happening or something goes wrong, my anxiety to the point where you can just open the floor and let me pass right through, because I just don't want to face whatever it is. And it might have been a couple of years ago I've started this journey, but it really and truly, it's until last year that I kept, for whatever reason, something, and I said to my husband, I said, I don't like the way I'm feeling. Let's watch. And so we start watching when it would happen, what will happen to it. And then I start being able to connect. And it's like, oh, and then as I was doing my master's, and I think that's what it was, because I was doing my master's in mental health and wellness, it was making this connection. And it's like, oh, I am really struggling with some severe anxiety. And so, of course, you're to some extent, you're embarrassed because of that stigma of coming out to say, oh, I'm struggling with this. Because then next thing you know, people are going to say, oh, I don't want to talk to her. She crazy or she mad, you know? And it's like, no. But if you can come out, oh, Linda, and share your story, and I can come out and share my story, and everyone else could come out and share their story, then we wouldn't have over 40 million, just in America alone, of adults. We haven't even counted the children that are struggling with mental health and struggling with some challenges, much less going into the Caribbean, where for me, Guyana, we have, you know, I don't think we still have, but we were one of the top suicide rate. And our country is less than 1 million people, you know? So what do you say about, you know, just going into, so how do we just really get people comfortable to just start talking, to just having these open dialogue?
You know, I definitely think it's having more opportunities like this. And not all over Zoom all the time. This is just, you know, special occurrence to be able to communicate with each other. But while we have this COVID, there are organizations that do host support groups. There are several organizations that provide support groups for families, like NAMI. the National Alliance for Mental Illness. There are support groups, peer support groups here in Georgia. Just as you have Alcoholics Anonymous or grief survivors support groups, there are support groups for just about anything under the sun. So
Yeah.
for our community to at least start seeking out those types of support groups to where they can speak with others who know what they're going through, that can give them some advice, then that's when you can start understanding more about what the illnesses are. I think a lot of the fear is based on lack of understanding, and it's the fear that really drives people to just not want to talk about it, not knowing enough about it. You don't want to talk about it. You're going to say the wrong thing. So yeah, I think that's what we need to do. Just continue to have conversations, create opportunities for others to speak up, start talking about some of the things that has happened in our childhood, in our past, and just being brave enough to say it and call it as it is, and even tell about the things that wasn't right, so we don't repeat those same old patterns.
Correct. Yes, I absolutely agree with you, Linda. I absolutely agree with you. If you are just now tuning in, we are talking about mental health in the Caribbean community, and this is lived experience. This is being recorded, but you can post your questions if you have any questions. For the last 30 minutes of our segment, which is about 4:30, we will actually go private. So if you want to ask any questions, where you don't want it to be shared or anything like that, just know that we will have that private session for you. Caribbean people, we like to party, we like to drink. Carnival, and of course, Carnival is at a standstill for everyone this year. We've been trying to make do with it on Facebook and Zoom, but it's nothing like getting together, talking about substance abuse or drinking. When does drinking become more of a mental health problem, or
Right, like a substance use problem.
Yes, when does it
Yeah.
become a problem?
Well, what I've found, and of course I'm talking from my own experience, if anyone doesn't agree with me, so be it. But what I've found and what I've come to realize, that when individuals have experienced trauma, or they're going through something difficult, something stressful in their lives, everyone is looking to feel better. And not just when you're talking about alcohol and drugs, but people use different things to make them feel better, whether it's sex, whether it's gambling. Everyone wants to feel better. And it's when you become dependent on that thing to make you feel good, then you end up having an addiction to it. So a lot of times, people don't start out thinking that that's what they're doing. They start out casually drinking. Oh, but I'm feeling good. I'm having fun. I'm out and about, and it's part of the fun that's going on. But when you start doing that outside of the fun environment, you're at home now, you can't function unless you have a drink. Every day you have to have a smoke. And you just think, a lot of times, especially in the Caribbean community, where smoking is acceptable, a lot of people just believe they're smoking so I can have a closer connection to God. Okay, you want to have a closer connection to God, and maybe that's true for you, but is everything else surrounding it, is it a spiritual setting that you're doing it in? Or are you just going outside and smoking and God is not even a part of your thought pattern, and you just doing it so you can feel good? A lot of times people just say things to make them feel good about what they're doing.
Yeah,
but
that's true.
People need to really look at, how is this making me feel? How often am I doing this? what am I neglecting in my life that I should be doing by doing this? You know, am I spending most of my time doing this and I don't have time for my kids? I don't have time. I'm taking off from work. You know, is it interfering with my relationships? You know, so there's other things that people have to analyze, that whether or not it's worth it. And then once people recognize that, okay, well, maybe I'm using this a little too much. If there's a point where you say I'm using too much and you can't stop on your own, you are addicted. So maybe you need to go and get some help, some extra help. But part of that help, you would want to ask, well, why do I need to feel this good all the time? What am I avoiding? What issue am I avoiding addressing in my life?
Yeah.
You know, I know for a lot of folks in the Caribbean community, we become workaholics.
Yeah.
And that can be an underlying reason for we're becoming a workaholic, so we can avoid dealing with other issues. You know, we occupy our time. I don't have time to think about that.
Yeah.
You know,
And
yeah.
that's a like a key word or key phrase that we'll use. Oh, I don't have time for that. Oh, don't bother me. I don't have time for that. Like, no, I don't want to worry about that. Yeah.
Yeah. I don't have time for feelings. You know, I just have to get up and work. You know,
because we weren't taught to have feelings, with boys were told to, if boys that cry, they cried, you better wipe them tears up, and girls, go sit in the corner, you weren't taught to just really express yourself. You weren't taught to express yourself at all. Tell me about dual, hopefully you guys are liking this discussion. Are you getting any? I didn't see anything in the chat. Are you seeing anything in the chat?
No, not as yet.
No. Okay. All right. So what is dual diagnosis?
A dual diagnosis is when someone has a substance abuse challenge. I like to call everything a challenge. Mm-hmm. And they have a mental health challenge. So having both of those at the same time is a dual diagnosis. And it can be anything. It could be any substance with any mental health diagnosis. It could be just anxiety. It can be depression. It can be, any number of things. And it can be very debilitating to have to deal with both of those things at the same time.
Yeah. Yeah, that's true. That's true. Yeah.
And it's hard when someone has both to, if they're seeking out counseling, it's difficult if you're going to counseling that's only going to address one. You have to be able to address both of those at the same time, because it just cycles back into each other if you're not addressing both.
Yeah. Wow. Yeah. Cool. Nice. Anyone wants to chime in?
So I have a question. So, for example, the first one that you were defining, the mental illness, mental disease, I think it was.
Mental health versus mental illness.
Mm-hmm. I could give you a mental health. So I think I could give you a great example for me for mental health. Like, I have an autoimmune disease, hypothyroid problem. The side effect of that is depression. So because depression comes from that, what I realized that I needed for me, and this might apply to other people, I lacked serotonin. When my serotonin level gets low, I get depressed. So I used to exercise a lot and stuff like that, which I still do, and it helps. But I found that I needed to get something else, something in addition to that, to help me keep focus and, just not from that, almost like a mood swing.
Right.
that would be, I guess, a good example for someone having mental health issue that just needed that little help. And sometimes you don't even realize that I do need something, and you think it hard to go to the doctor because it's a stigma. But
Yeah,
if you don't get the help you need, you're going to be stuck in that situation that you're in because your body likes it, so you have to get it. And in my case, it was serotonin. So I hope that helps somebody.
Yes, I mean,
great.
definitely, because a lot of times, people think that it stands alone. It could be something else that's triggering that fluctuation in your mental health. It could be something like maybe you're not getting enough sleep. A lot of times people don't realize not getting enough sleep affects your mental health. It can cause you if people don't sleep for long periods of time, you can actually go into psychosis, which people don't even realize. So yeah, there are a lot of things in our lives that could be affecting something else. So it's important that we try to get rid of some of this stigma and try to address that, hey, it's not always okay that there's something wrong with your brain. It may be something wrong with your physical health that's causing your body to compensate in different ways. Yeah. Thanks for
Absolutely.
sharing that.
Thanks for sharing that. Yes, that was very informative. You know, like now because I've been able to control my anxiety, I am able now feel like if I'm overwhelmed, I'm able to understand that, okay, pull back and just take a break or just stop wherever in the middle of it, you just stop. Whatever you're doing that's going to cause that anxiety or will trigger the anxiety, I'm able now to recognize certain signs. What are some signs, and Christine, you said certain things just now. You know, what are some signs when it comes to mental health and with anxiety and depression and things like that? What are some signs? What are some signs that for me, I know sleep is one of overworking, agitated when I'm just like, oh my gosh, I'm just irritated, want to scream and yell at everybody. I realize, okay, step back. Or I'm in a position where I'm just getting, I don't like to be embarrassed. I don't like to
Right.
be embarrassed. And so my body just shuts down and I'm sweating. But what are some signs would you say, or anyone who wants to, chime in?
Anyone care to chime in?
I can't even describe it to you. It's like I feel it within my body. It's like I know something is off, or I feel like I have to get sunlight. For some reason, sunlight helps when I go outside and walk. Or I don't like taking medication. So that's a signal that I forget to take my medication. I forgot I didn't take my medication because I don't like swallowing pills. So, you know, I actually can feel something is off. And as you get aware of it, I feel like you know when something is off. Or somebody else tell you, boy, you're irritated all the time.
Yeah.
It's a miserable.
I feel it in my, now that I'm recognizing, I feel I do the same thing like Christine. I feel it too. I feel like, okay, I need to pull it together. And for me, this is just for me. Remember, this is lived experience, so we're all sharing our lived experience. I have what for whatever reason this works, and I pull my thoughts. It's like I'm pulling my thoughts when I feel like I'm all over the place. I just go like this, and I pull my thoughts back together. For whatever reason, it pulls my thoughts together, and I'm like, okay, go ahead, Sam, think, clear your thoughts, whatever is going on, clear your mind, and just go ahead and think.
Or they call it in the islands like scatterbrain. You can't get it together. You're like your mind is racing because you're thinking about a million things, and that in itself won't make you be able to sleep.
Yeah,
Yeah.
yes.
Yeah, there's a really great app. It's actually called the WRAP app. It's WRAP. I wish I had a picture of it, but it's a wellness recovery action plan. Um, and in that app, you create it asks you different questions. And some of the question it asks is kind of like, what do you do to help you when you're in a bad place, when you're not feeling well? What are some signs and some symptoms that you have, when you have, like, what are your stressors? What are those things that stress you out? And you go through this app, and what are some early warning signs that things are like something's wrong? So for me, some of my warning signs, because of course I told you, I have PTSD. So I used to have nightmares. I don't really have nightmares anymore, thank God. I used to, when I start to isolate myself, because I suffer from depression, if I start to isolate myself, if I'm not sleeping well, if, poor sleep, and sometimes for everyone's different. So some of the odd things that I would eventually begin to recognize that I do when things are starting to break down, I like to have things in its place, especially my clothes. So if there's a chair in my room and the clothes are starting to pile up on this chair, something's going on. So I started to recognize that for myself. Or maybe, we all have these days when we sleep in. But if I sleep in 2 days in a row and I have on the same clothes, I'm not coming out my room, I'm not answering my phone, something's going on. Not doing other things to take care of myself that I know I should be doing. When I start it's really important to monitor your thoughts. When I start having negative thoughts about me, no one loves me, no one cares, if I'm not around, it wouldn't matter. When you start having those kind of thoughts, if you're a person that suffers from depression and suicidal ideation, you got to try to check it. And one of the things that we learn is called catch it, check it, change it. So you catch that negative thought, you catch yourself doing it, you put it in check, and you check it against the facts that are around you. Because a lot of times those negative thoughts are not true.
Yeah.
If I'm telling myself nobody loves me, well, hey, yeah, your children love you. You have friends that care about you. So that's not true. So once you put that thought in check, now you have a responsibility to change it. Say the positive, say
Yes.
exactly what is true, and that can help bring you back. It's good sometimes to have a daily routine. I have a daily routine. Well, I try to. I know things are getting off
Yeah.
when I don't follow my daily routine, and my daily routine is praying in the morning, reading my Bible or devotional book, eating some breakfast, getting up by a certain time and making sure that I'm taking my shower and putting on clothes. Even though you're not going out, if you get dressed, you tend to feel better. Put on some makeup. If you wear makeup, it can help you feel better.
My kids are always saying, why are you dressing up, Mom? What are you? And I was like, no, because I want to feel better. If I stay in my, these old raggedy clothes or something like that, I'm going to not feel good. And then I'm going to be like, oh my gosh, I'm in the bed, So yeah, that makes a lot of, it's really important. I know one of my what I realized, one of my stressor is when I was young, I always liked being on time. But when I was a teenager, I got in trouble with my cousins because I would always be like an hour early, and then they would get in trouble. Yes, I would always like to be on, and they said, what, your grandma? You got to always be on time. And so I started backing down, and then it became really a bad habit that I developed to being late. But I realized that that's a big problem because number one, I'm late. I'm embarrassed because I show up late. I went to a predominantly Caucasian church. My kids would be like, Mom, they can see us, we're late. But then you get embarrassed and you're like, oh my gosh. And then all the, everything, the anxiety is over you, like, oh my gosh, oh, everybody's looking at me now. oh gosh, you're talking about me, whatever it is. But I realized one of the things is that I don't like to be late. So I've been working really, really hard because I realized that my body, I'm more calm. I can function and I can think because when you show up late, and Caribbean people, we like to just show up late, and then you're stressing and screaming at everybody else. Why y'all ain't got this? Why y'all ain't do this? Why y'all ain't da 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 whatever? But is that no? If we kind of like plan it, like you said, you have a daily plan. I'm still working on the daily plan. I'll tell you that much.
Mhm.
I'm still working on that. I don't know. I'm still okay. Why are you laughing? Wait, let me see your face. Let me see your
Christine laughing.
She's giving me the eye. I am still working on the daily plan. So I start exercising, but I'm trying to be consistent. So I probably need an accountability partner. If anyone wants to pick it up.
I can't be that for your exercise plan. I'm sorry. I can't be consistent in exercise. That's not so I need an accountability partner.
Yeah.
Probably 2 or 3 of them.
Yeah, I need an accountability partner just to get because I'll start off really good. And that for me, 7 days don't work and the 21 days don't work. I think someone actually said it the other day. It's actually 30 days. They really, because I'm like
Yeah.
21 days, nothing happened. What happened? You know? So I need an accountability partner. Anyone wants to chime in?
I'll share something. Hello?
Yes, we're here. We're here.
Good. I'd like to go back down memory lane and go back to the age of 9 years old. And up to age 9, my life was great, was super. Had my mom and dad, both parents loving their children. But it happened suddenly. My dad was brought home one night and he had had a stroke. And this was when I was age 6. So my dad was paralyzed on one side of his body. And after being paralyzed for 3 years, I thank God for him that he was a fun-loving dad, enjoyed doing things with his children. He would take us to the beach, and he would not just take us, but he would make sure that one week he would take me, then he would take my cousin the next week, then he would take my sister the next week. So he rotated the kids and made sure everybody felt special. And he loved his children and loved his family. But it happened 3 years later, he got a second stroke. And just right after my birthday, and within 10 days after my birthday, my dad passed away. And it affected me so drastically. My life changed in that I became very withdrawn, and nobody could understand the depth of my grief and understand what I was going through. But it left me just numb on the inside. And my dad, after he passed, it got worse for me in that I would daydream, sit in the class and just daydream, be far gone, thinking about him. And I had a teacher at that time. My mom was a teacher at the same school that I was attending. My mom didn't know what was happening. And this teacher, I won't call it her names, she would pick on me being a teacher's kid. She would pick on me and make sure that I was made the example if I wasn't paying attention or if somebody was talking to me and she caught me responding. That was it. She'd say, "Come on up here, Garth," and paddle me. And I endured that for quite a while until I got to the point I said, I can't take this anymore. So I had to tell my mom, and I unloaded on her and told her, tell that teacher not to beat me. Can she understand that I am really mourning the loss of my dad? And my mom went and told her, please understand what's happening with him. And the moment she told her, the next day she came back to class, she treated me completely differently. But that still did not, it helped, but did not really end what I felt. It took years from age 9 until I was about age 17 when I truly realized that and had an encounter with Jesus Christ, and I invited Christ into my life. It made a difference, and that's when it broke. That's when no longer was I being tormented by the passing of my dad, but I was able to now accept it and move on, and that changed my life drastically. But I just wanted to say that there are listeners out there, young people, you may have lost your dad at a very early age, or a mom. People don't understand the things that children go through, the trauma in their life as a result of losing a parent that you love dearly. And only an individual who has been through it can understand. But it would be very important for not parents only, but be important for teachers to be able to understand what children are going through during the process from the time their mom or dad passes until they've got to get counseling would be beneficial, but just help and understanding from a teacher knowing that this child has experienced something very traumatic in their life.
Wow.
That's all I want to share for now.
That's a lot that you've shared. Thank you so much, Mr. Guard, for being so open and for sharing, because I'm sure so many have that same experience. And, as you were talking, I was, not completely thinking, but just, when you spoke about the teacher first, I mean, from so many years still, for you to share that story so vividly, it can show, the love you had for your dad. But then it also shows, like, what if adults in your circle, adults in children's circle, especially in the Caribbean, and especially teachers, because, corporal punishment, spanking is still something very relevant in the community. And the parents, normally this is what the Caribbean is. I gonna beat you, and then your parents will come home and beat, and you're gonna get a licking from your mother and your father too. So what would you say? First of all, how could it have been different had the adult, even before, like, had they taken the time to even talk to you or even share, like now they have, if there's a big major something that happened, they do grief share or something like that with kids. How could something like that, like supporting kids during such time, during such child trauma, how could that help? Especially like when you're losing like a parent. I mean, I have both my parents, thank God, but I've lost my grandmother, but my grandmother was like my mom. But how can that help a child if an adult just really understand? Like, even though it didn't, like you said with the teacher, that after your mom spoke to her, she kind of changed a little bit. How did that help you more so to heal?
Good question. I think we go through events in our lives that bring us to a place where we realize that life, a lot of times, especially for me at that age, was it taught me a lot, because, and I had to go through this process for 8 years, 8 years to fully come to a point in life where there's no limit as to how long a person can grieve. That's why today we have like grief counseling for kids and for adults, which is very important, which is one of the best things that you could do for a child that young and that impressionable, to give them the type of support that they need to be able to bring stability back into their lives and help them to deal with the trauma that they've been made aware of, and something that lingers for years, unless of course you have a group of individuals who are cognizant as to what you've had to endure, and then can go back and offer the kind of support that will help you through the crisis, that it doesn't have to last. It doesn't have to last, let's say, 8 years like it did for me, but it can actually, with input from individuals such as your pastor, a teacher, any professional, a counselor, that can really help to bring you to a place where you can begin to deal with the trauma of losing a loved one, your parent, the most important, your mom and dad, important two figures in your life, and losing them at an early age. It comes with a tremendous price, but it doesn't have to, the effect of it and what it does to an individual doesn't have to last over such a long extended period. It can be dealt with immediately, and you can offer the support quickly. But the important thing is to be sensitive as an adult to that child's needs and work with that child. And anybody can make a difference. Anybody can make a difference in a child's life.
Awesome, awesome. I like that you said sensitive. Too often too often children, especially in the Caribbean community, are seen but not heard. You're seen, but you're told go on the side, and you're not heard. But like you said, sensitive, understanding, you're putting yourself in that child's position to say what if, but so often we're so busy doing all kinds of stuff that we're not taking the time. And sometimes I think, and tell me anyone on the panel, thank you, Mr. Garth, for sharing. If you agree, that sometimes I think adults don't feel like kids should have anything to worry about, or they shouldn't have any feelings.
Right.
Like they don't understand, like, oh, you're just a child, you don't understand. Because I hear that a lot. What do you all say?
Yeah, definitely. I mean, a lot of people don't recognize that actually children feel very deeply, and a lot of times because they are so innocent, they pick up on a lot of things that we think that they're not, they're not even picking up on. But Mr. Gart, I definitely want to, thank you again for sharing, because grief, through loss, and that could be the loss of many things, in your case, you were talking about your parent. But a lot of times, one of our counselors in a previous panel, she talked about the grief that she experienced by a parent leaving her in the island and the parent moving to the state to make a better life. So there's a separation. So if we start thinking about how many, and let's just looking at parents and children, how many children are separated from their parents, whether it's through divorce, whether it's through them dying, whether it's through incarceration, or just being separate. Because for a time, my mom would take me and move me every 2 years. I was living in a different family member's home every 2 years. And that really affected me, being able to bond, not having tradition. Every time I move somewhere, I'm in a different tradition in that family. I'm with my Caribbean family in Trinidad, and then I'm off to, live in the States with my father's family, and the traditions are different. The religious experience is different. Not being able to bond and make friends. There's so many things that really affected me that no one really took the time to think about. And then moving so much, that's how I end up experiencing all the sexual abuse, going from different households and being afraid to speak up and tell anyone about it. Because as a child, no one was going to listen. And then predators have a way of making you feel like if you say anything, they're not going to believe you. They're going to blame you and things like that. But definitely grief is something that a lot of people are walking around in pain and just thinking that it's normal. Everyone loses someone, so they're just trying to go on and survive and make it in the rest of their life, and not recognizing that may be the one thing that's keeping them in a depressed state. They find themselves going back and forth in depression, to have that addressed. There's something called the ACE study. It's Adverse Childhood Experiences. And what it does, it was a study that was done and by the CDC. And in that study, they ask questions that help determine what has impacted children up until the age of 18. So things like abuse, neglect, and household dysfunction. And the higher your score is, the more likely that person is to have mental health conditions and even physical health conditions, which I found is really amazing. So our mental health can be impacted by our physical health, and our physical health can be impacted by our mental health.
Yeah.
It's really amazing. So the more stress you have in your life, that could be causing your hypertension. It could be, causing all these other problems that you're having, and maybe because you're not addressing the mental health issues, you're keeping all these things bottled up to yourself. You're allowing your body to hold more stress. And even with cancer, they're relating to stress as well. So it's really interesting that we have to get on board and realize that our mental health is just as important as our physical health. If we want to maintain a good physical health, we have to take care of our mental health.
Yeah, I absolutely agree. Absolutely agree. I think a lot of times people think, people, that we fail to realize that most of the times this is how, and like we're saying, this is lived experience. And me just, I like to study the brain. I probably should do something about it, but I really like to study just patterns of life and things like that. And what I realize is that most of us as adults, really, we revert back to childhood. So if we didn't have a really good childhood, that's where we're reverting back to really try to figure out this adult thing, figure out how to be an adult, how to maneuver as an adult, because you remember pretty much from your cooking to your cleaning to how you decorate your home, different things, as you go by, you'll implement certain things, but majority of it comes from your childhood. So if your childhood wasn't created, you didn't have a really good childhood, it's a hard thing to really off balance. You could change it and you could change the narrative, but it takes a long time if you didn't get the help, you know, if you didn't get the help when you were a child and you didn't get the help and you don't get the help when you're an adult, you sometimes we can repeat it and some people choose not to. You know, like when we had the Dear Daddy last week, Mr. Garth, when you had the Dear Daddy last week and the men were sharing, like some of them shared that, no, I chose not to repeat. You know, I went through this as a child, not having a great father, not having a great, you know, person. So I chose not to repeat that. I chose to be the best dad that I possibly can. But most of the times I think adults fail to realize that you really have to, you only have so many years with a child. You only have so many years. And now that I have teenagers, I'm like, Dad, I think I only have like 12 years. Because after then, they're like, they don't even want to be bothered. But you still have to groom, you still have to train, you still have to show them certain way of life because it's what they're going to mimic or fashion. Like, you know, like Mr. Garth rightfully said, you know, his dad, he remembered, even though he was, you know, his dad passed when he was 9, my dad taking us to the beach and he would take turns and he will do this and he will do that. And how many of us can probably share some of those experiences, good and bad? I remember this. A lot of time we're sitting on, I remember. But I had a question. How do you, because you were talking about Olinda, you know, your mom moving you every 2 years. And, you know, to some you may say, well, there could be some type of mental challenge there or whatever it is, that every 2 years she felt the need to just move. How can we help adults, Caribbean adults, who feel I'm the way I am, this is how I am, leave me alone, I don't need to be bothered, don't bother me, I like the way I am, I ain't changing for nobody. How many of us have heard that? I'm not changing for, how can we help those adults to just understand the importance of mental health? And this is open for everyone.
Well, honestly, I've learned you can't change anybody. You can only change yourself. A lot of time we get caught up in trying to change other people. But what is important to do,
No, it seems like the connection there. Someone else wants to chime in while Olinda gets back on.
I agree with her. I don't think you can change people, but, and I think
And maybe change, I apologize, maybe change was a bad choice of word, but how do you encourage them to seek to seek mental health and wellness?
well, sometimes if you have a friend or a family member could bring these things to their attention, whether a conversation or um, just to sit down. I had to do it in my family where, I had to bring something to the family member's attention, and I wasn't comfortable doing it myself, so I kind of called trusted family members and had to sit down. So sometimes the person, a lot of times, don't even recognize they have an issue. So I think it's maybe somebody recognizing that, yeah, this person has an issue and you want the best interest, you're there for the best interests of that person. So you want to sit them down and, you know, offer whatever assistance. And sometimes they don't know where to go or who to contact, and maybe give them resources or recommend that they go to whatever. But it starts as a conversation, and people around them, hopefully, if they don't recognize they have a problem, maybe someone around them do, and have that private conversation or get the family involved.
I absolutely agree. I agree.
definitely. Mhm.
Anyone else? So,
Yeah, I was saying before I got cut off. Yeah, just like like she mentioned, if you can have the conversation with them, hopefully they'll be receptive to it. But knowing that we cannot personally change anyone, we can provide them with information. You know, we can try to educate them on it. And hopefully, even if it's just bringing a pamphlet, you try to talk to them, they won't listen. You leave a little brochure on the table. Maybe they'll read it,
No,
and maybe they'll start
on.
doing some research.
What you said?
You know,
Nothing wrong with the man.
Huh?
Problem.
Yes, that is true. Do you find that now that you have, you know, and all of us, we, you know, we have our experience, do you find that now that you have understand your own mental challenges and you're able to control your own mental challenges, that you have more empathy with others, like when you see them behave a certain way or you see them do a certain things, you just say, Lord, you know, for me, it's like, okay, you know, do you find yourself that you have a little bit more empathy, you know, even with children, or do you see that you find you have more empathy with others?
oh yeah, yeah, I definitely do. And I worked as a foster care case manager for a while, and I end up having a lot more empathy for the parents that had that were experiencing drug addiction, and some of them had dual diagnosis, and recognizing that I have within my family, as a child, I had to live through some of that experience myself with family members. So I definitely did have more sympathy. And then for the children, even just recently, where I was working at the time, a young man, he was talking and laughing out loud to himself. And one of the other staff members, you know, she was bringing attention to it, but not in a good way. So I said, well, if you think about all our great talents in this world, Michael Jackson, you know, if we think about Kanye West and, you know, all these other great talents that we have in the world, if they didn't have a pen and a paper with them, and even the comedians, you know, even our comedians, if they didn't have a pen and paper with them, how else would they get their expression out? So the young man was over there coming up with ideas, but people automatically assume because he's saying it out loud and he's laughing to himself. As a comedian, you have to laugh at your stuff first. If it's not funny, you know, nobody else is gonna laugh. But how does someone become great? So I think we really place stigmas on people and not really opening our eyes to seeing that that is just an outward expression that they're having. It doesn't mean he wasn't hurting anyone. He wasn't being so loud and disruptive that it was causing everyone to be uncomfortable. It's just not common. We're just not used to seeing someone talking out loud and laughing to themselves. But yeah, I think I'm a lot more a lot more compassionate when I see others going through something that I have never experienced and that I don't personally understand. But I think we should all be a little bit more compassionate.
So true.
Anyone else?
I'm a lot more aware when people have, I know there's what they call it, they touch with something, but that's what we say in the Caribbean. But I'm a lot more aware and understanding and of that. And, you know, I deal with a lot of special needs individuals because my son is special needs. And, you know, even they too suffer from depression. I've been helping a young lady that her mother died, and she too suffered from the depression. So sometimes I have to like intervene and you know, talk to her over the phone, or you know, whoever that calls me. I've even experienced even talking the same young lady out of killing herself. So you know, just being aware and being able to help, it's a good thing. You could save a life.
Yeah.
Awesome, awesome, awesome.
And most people would love to have someone just talk to them, to listen, just to listen.
Yes.
You know, everyone needs to have someone to talk to. So even if you see someone going through something, if you're comfortable enough to approach and say, what happened? You know, what's going on? How are you feeling today? I think that's kind of lost a lot in society today. You know, we'll just say, hey, what's up, and keep walking. Or hey, how you doing? Like, you know, like we know that's something that we should be saying, but we forgot that we have to stop and listen to the answer,
Yeah.
you know? So it's ingrained in us to say, hey, how you doing? But we no longer stand up and listen. We keep
Say how
going.
you doing and keep it moving.
Right.
And you're like, yeah, hey, how you doing? I mean, I'm just doing it out of courtesy, but I really got to go, you know? We're in such a fast-paced world now, and such, you know, no one stops to talk to anyone anymore.
Yeah. Yeah.
You know, no one stops to, and with our young people, you know, no one stops our young people. I can see my kids, they're all in the same room and they're on the cell phone. And we all have this, you know, bad, you know, habit that we, you know, the phone and technology and everything else have taken over. But we're not having conversations, like you said. We're not taking the time, just giving someone 2 minutes. I remember doing that when I did the training, as Olinda did, the certified peer specialist, and they had us do that. Role play. Yes.
Mhm.
There's a name for it. I can't remember the name, but it was 2 minutes to listen directly. 2 minutes to listen to that person.
And you can't say anything. You just
You
have to
can't
sit
see
and listen.
anything. What if we try it now?
No, I would fail. I would fail, Miss. Attention.
Easily distracted.
I don't think you would. I think you would do great. So what if we try it, Olinda? Mr. Garth would probably be a really great listener. He wouldn't respond for 2 minutes. Mine was really hard. I said, Lord, just let me listen to what the person is saying. Don't not my own thoughts, but let me just listen. Okay. Do you want to try it, Olinda? 2 minutes.
What's the topic?
You're coming up with your topic, and we're going to listen, and then we're going to respond to see if we really heard what you said, and then you can let us know if we really did listen.
Ooh, that's okay.
Without taking notes, because this is what I do when I listen, when I'm forced to listen. I take notes because
I do too.
I know that after about a minute, I will not hear you. I hear you, but I don't hear you.
So maybe this is a great technique for us to practice. I hear, you know, the important things that pull out at me, like, okay, oh, that's, yeah, but we're not going to remember every single thing, but just the mere fact that we hear what the person has stated.
I think this would be a good board retreat activity.
It would be, yes. So let's keep that on the.
Is it called a dyad?
A dyad, something like. I have to pull the book back out.
I think it might be called a dyad.
Yeah. You know, sometimes because of us and we've gone through, so we're more, we have more compassion, as Olinda stated, and we're there for others. But how do we avoid compassion fatigue? And for those that don't, you know, where you're so compassionate, because I am someone that I will give you the last shirt on my back. That's just me. I will feed you and be like, okay, I'm good. And then I'm really hungry later on. I'm like, oh my gosh, I should have saved some of that food for myself. But I don't think about it. If there's a need, I just jump and get it done, and that's it. I've learned to step back a little bit more now, and not to, because I think sometimes when people see that you're very compassionate or you're a very caring person, sometimes people take that for granted or take advantage of that. But how do you avoid compassionate fatigue, where you care for people, but you still make sure, which is coming back to that mental health, still making sure that you're taking care of you?
Right. You were going to say something, Mr. Garth?
No, I was waiting for you.
Oh. Well, I mean, this is whether you're taking care of people as your work, or if you're taking care of someone. No, I'm just saying, I mean, compassionate fatigue can happen under any circumstances. Say you take caring for an elderly family member, you know, you're caring, you're doing something related to work where you have to show compassion in your work. It's really, it goes back to self-care. It goes back to recognizing that you cannot, what's that saying? You cannot pour out of an empty cup.
Yeah.
So if you're constantly emptying yourself and you're not being replenished, eventually you're gonna burn out. You're gonna, then you might have start having some mental health, some physical health issues. But you have to try to figure out what works for you. What are some things that you can do to take care of yourself, to relieve some of the anxiety that you end up feeling when you're working too hard, or when you're giving yourself to people or individuals who may not be showing you appreciation. That can become very tiring. How do you, regain your strength and your enthusiasm to continue doing the work? You have to step back, a lot of times, and whether that's, for some people that might be getting a massage, um, keeping up with your, whatever your spiritual practices are, going to church, um, or just talking, having a friend that you can go and vent and talk to. Because sometimes you have to get some things off your chest, not keeping them bottled up. And then knowing your limits, knowing how to say no sometimes, knowing if something is, you have a conflict in your schedule, you have homework, and you're trying to do,
Is
you have papers to write.
is that personal?
I don't know. Is it, Madam President? Learning to say no.
Learning to say no. Yeah, that is the hardest thing that I think I had to, and still learning, is learning to say no. And sometimes you think that people around you should just understand, okay, no, but people don't understand unless, they'll do as much as you allow them to. And I've learned that. I've learned that, and learned to, it's still hard for me to say no, but I realize that if I want to finish my master's and I want to do all the things that I want to get done for my family, that I must say no. And it's really hard because I came from, my mom came from a mom that says yes to everyone, that's what I've seen, you say yes, 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 yes. Oh yeah, I could do it. I could do it. I could do it. And then you burn yourself out. Yeah. Anyone else?
Just limiting your available time. Sometimes you just have to take time out for you. And that's how I do it. Just take time out for me, and you might not hear from me for a minute. My time.
I've started a clock. Someone
So,
might
Mr. Garth, what do you do for self-care? What do you do, Mr. Garth, for self-care?
Well, number one is I gotta take time for me. And in order to not get burnt out, you can get burnt out so easily by doing too much and thinking that you actually are doing for this person what they need God to do for them. And you got to step away at times. And that's why if you're married, it is so important that your mate, you should listen to your partner. Your wife, your husband is going to be very instrumental in helping you to know when to stop.
Right.
And really, instead of keep going, pressing forward to try to reach somebody that doesn't necessarily want to be reached, sometimes you got to let go and let God do what only God can do. So it's so important to know when it's time to stop, when it's time to put the brakes on. And my wife is very good at helping me to get to that place where I know, God, stop. You can't do everything. You got to let go, and this person will be fine. Let's just pray. Let's just keep praying for them. So it's important.
Yeah.
Don't take on more than you can handle. And God doesn't want any of us to become burnt out by the things that we are putting in front of Him when He is there as our source. He wants to give you all the strength to be able to embrace the situation, the problem, deal with it, but let it go. Once it's dealt with, that's it. Let it go. Move on. Don't stay until you get burnt out.
Awesome. Great tip. Great tip. We might have someone that's watching right now that may, the dots are connecting. They're like, okay, I need some assistance. I need some type of resources. What type of resources are out there for anyone that might be going through some type of mental struggles, and they know they've been going through something, but they just can't put their hands on it?
And it's COVID time.
And it's COVID time, isolation. I mean, quarantine.
Right.
You're
Well,
not able
fortunate
to
for
do your
us,
norm. Go ahead.
fortunate for us here in Georgia, there are several phone lines that people can call if they're stressed. There's some COVID crisis support for individuals who have mental health issues. There are mental health, it's called peer support warm lines. There are also peer support warm lines for individuals who are who have challenges with substance abuse. They can call these lines and someone would listen to what they have to say. And it's not a doctor. A lot of times people who have those types of challenges don't want to talk to a professional. They want to talk to someone that can just listen and relate to them, who understands. So fortunately, we have those lines here, and we do have those up on our website, those numbers on the CaribbeanGeorgia.org website that folks can go to. But like I mentioned before, there are national organizations in many states that provide support for individuals who are either have a family member that has a mental health issue or they themselves. So there's Mental Health of America. There is NAMI. Those are two of the major organizations that are out there that are national organizations that people can get some support from as well.
Yes, and for children, I'm a part of the National Federation for Families with Children with Mental Health. And there are lots of support group across Georgia. So if you go to the Georgia Parent Support Network, I actually personally do have one of my own parent support group as well. So if you struggle, you have some children, you have some challenges with children, they're not bad. They don't need to go, back home with a family member. I've heard that too many times where, the children in America, they don't listen, so I'm going to send them back to whichever Caribbean island or country they're from, and figuring that would be the solution to it. That is not the solution to it. There are lots of resources here for parents to get plugged in, and no one have to, no one is going to broadcast your story or anything like that. You can come and get help for your children as well. Olinda's posting some information as well and some numbers. And with posting that, Olinda, like today earlier, before we started this program, I shared with you all that there was a young lady who apparently she did TikTok videos. I just found out about TikTok. I've been trying to get my kids to help me with TikTok, but no one will. But, it was sad to hear that she's 16 years of age. And you would think, oh, she has 2 million followers. She has 2 million followers and she should be happy. Beautiful young lady. Her name is Sia, I don't, Sia Kakar or some, that's, I think, her name. But she committed suicide. And they're saying that they had no clue. Let's talk about suicide. I know, Linda, you're expert in with suicide prevention, and you do actually training and things like that. Help us out with some resources for suicide and some of the signs as well.
Sure. Well, what I posted there is actually the U.S. National Suicide Prevention Hotline number and the website. And you can call that number when you're in crisis, and they will support you and can get you connected locally to a local crisis hotline, whatever state you're in. Well, with suicide, a lot of times when people think about suicide and they hear about a suicide, they tend to think that that person ended their life because of a single incident. They may hear, oh, their husband left them. Oh, they lost their job. Any one item people will pick up and say, well, that's why they did it. But in reality, suicide is what's considered to be multifaceted, meaning that in most cases, it's a variety of things that compound themselves that would lead someone to choose to end their life by suicide. So for example, in my case, it was the depression, which is brought on by life stressors, feeling of hopelessness, being separated from family. So it's multiple things that lead someone up to that point, and nowadays they're even finding that, it can be due to a family history. They may actually have some sort of personality order or some severe medical illness. And combining all of those things, it can, lead someone to choose to end their life by suicide. So that's why I keep saying people need to listen more. Because if you really stop and listen and talk to someone, you can pick up on the areas that they're struggling in life. A lot of times we don't give people enough time to really talk about what they're going through, So, there's also like warning signs. So if someone is starting to talk about death and ways to end their life, they're starting to talk about feeling hopeless and everyone being better off without them, you may notice that maybe they're starting to use drug and alcohol more. You might notice some changes in behavior, particularly for children. If a child is very outgoing and they become very reserved, you had a child that was doing well in school, all of a sudden their grades are dropping. So you need to, just stop and listen more to individuals when they're talking to you. A lot of times people, within a week before they choose to end their life, they might give some sort of clues. They may say something, they may even do something physically, maybe giving away things that are important to them. So sometimes there's signs, but unfortunately, our young people are more spontaneous, and they may not give a sign, they may not write a letter. And people end up beating themselves up because they think that I should have known, I should have seen something, something, maybe she was trying to tell me something. But unfortunately, that's not always the case. So suicide it's a preventable occurrence. Death is a preventable form of death. And it really takes a village to be very open and honest. And that's what we're hoping in having these conversations, because ultimately we want to be able to recognize the signs, listen to others, so that we can ensure that people aren't making that a choice, you know, trying to connect people with resources so they don't use that as an out from this life. Life can be hard. I mean, I've had, yeah, being honest, within the last 3 weeks, I've had some thoughts. I had to revert back to my coping skills, you know, but I've had thoughts, you know, I've been going through a lot, you know, personally, and it's had me in a very negative place. But thank God for friends that listen, for a, you know, friend that would say, well, hey, I haven't heard from you. What's going on? Let's go to lunch. And then conversations, you know, give the person time, you know, make an opportunity to listen, you know, instead of just saying hi and bye.
And bye, yeah.
Yeah,
Yeah.
I think that's
Especially-
one of the underlying issues. Yeah, people are so much more into technology and staring at their phone. They're not meeting, and when they do go to a restaurant, both people on both sides,
Everyone is, yes.
you know, put the devices down and have conversations so you can pick up on different clues that someone is struggling, and maybe you can help them. Someone say, oh, I'm so stressed out. Oh, these kids are getting on my nerves. Okay, well, can I watch the kids, you know, bring the kids for an hour so you can get some alone time. So just being able to hear little clues on how you can help someone can mean make a world of difference in someone's life. So just getting back to supporting each other.
So,
What if you,
and that,
buddy-
go ahead, Christine.
I'm sorry. What if you have someone that always saying they're gonna kill themselves all the time? Like, I know a family member that always says they're gonna kill themselves all the time, and you're like, you're so tired of hearing it.
I understand. And yes, there are people who at times will use that as a form of seeking attention. But I, for one, never want to take a chance that maybe that was the one time that they were serious. So maybe they need some additional support. Maybe they need someone to go with them to counseling to find out why they're constantly saying this. And if they're resistant and they don't want to go to counseling, you can be that person that just have a conversation. So when they say that, how are you responding? Are you now at this point, you know, you don't want to hear it anymore, or you're just brushing it off? What is your response?
My response is okay. My response is okay. But what I'll do is usually just call and check on the person.
Mm-hmm.
And what if, you know, because I've had this situation before where someone, so that they can get their way, oh, I'm just going to take my own life, or I'm going to commit suicide, just so that they, especially when it, you know, and this person was much younger, like a teenager or something like that. I guess sometimes you just don't know, you know, because you're like, no, you're not going to get your way. This is not, you know, oh, I'm going to say I'm committing suicide because you want to get your way. Like, I guess just looking to see, when is it that they're constantly saying these things? Is it when they really want to get their way and they're not getting their way? And so that's why they said, I'm just going to kill myself. Because I heard, you know, especially in the Caribbean, I'm just going to kill myself. Anybody like me anyway, or whatever the case may be. Or like, what is it that, what's going on?
Teenager or something like
Well,
that. I guess
here in the back recording. Well, you know, we like to train people, don't ever not take it seriously. Every time someone says that, you should take it seriously, because that's not a natural behavior for someone to say they're going to end their life. Everyone is about survival. You know, everyone wants to live. You know, God placed this innate feeling of wanting to be successful and thrive. So if someone's constantly saying that they're actually letting it come out of their mouth, they have some internal feelings about that. They do have some internal feelings. Maybe they haven't developed coping skills. You know, maybe they don't know how to get what they want without manipulating someone, but at least have a conversation. If they say that, why? Why do you feel that way? What happened? What can I do to help relieve your stress? You know, And maybe that thing that they're asking for is really not what they want. You know, they're asking for this, but really what they want is your time. You know, really what they need is your time. You know, they need to feel some connection with someone. A lot of times kids that you might say are materialistic, they're compensating for not having other things.
Correct.
Maybe a parent has always given them something. So, you know, that's all they know. I want this so I can feel better. You know, like people who are addicted to shopping. You know, they're addicted to the shopping makes them feel better, but there's something missing there. There's a connection missing. They're looking for something. Like I said earlier, we are all trying to feel better so we can survive and we can go through life. So whether that's a shopping addiction or any other addiction, you know, so attention seeking can be an addiction, you know, because that makes me feel good when someone's giving me attention, because other than that, I'm not getting any attention. So bad attention is just as good. I'll just take what I can get.
Because at the end of the day,
definitely.
yeah.
Mhm.
Yeah, at the end of the day, people are
Definitely don't
looking for
ignore it.
relationships.
Don't brush it off.
Yeah.
Go ahead, Sam.
No, I said at the ending of the day, relationship is what, and I think we're missing that point, that relationship is the most important thing. You know, I constantly say to my cousin, like, I believe that my grandmother, they didn't have much, but they had the best life. We were able to talk, you sit, you talk, you played, you know, you created memories. But how many memories are really being created now that people are living in the bigger houses and driving the more expensive cars and having the latest of every single thing? But then there's something which you said, that connection, that emotional connection. I think we are neglecting that we are a spirit. You know, we have those emotions within us that's hidden, that's inside, that no one sees. And we're neglecting that. And so the outside, like you rightfully said, Olinda, the outside is portrayal, like if everything is going well and everything is doing good because I'm buying this and I'm doing that, and it looks like I am just having it all together. There's a song, I think, by Mary that says, I'm something with writing a whole lot of zeros, but what you don't know, when I get home, I'm
Oh yeah,
on the floor, something like,
on my knees in prayer.
on my
Yeah.
knees. And is that, yes, I'm writing the checks with a whole lot of zeros and I'm driving the car and I'm doing this, and I look good on the outside. I look really good on the outside. I look like everything is well, but then you get home in your own private, in your personal setting, and you're alone, you know, you're alone. And is that because there is a need for relationship and everyone is so busy. This year I'm making it my attempt. This month didn't work too well. So I'm waiting for July by the grace of God. But I'm making my attempt to say, no, I cannot be that busy. I cannot be busy doing everything. I don't need to be on every platform. I don't need to be, back in Guyana, they say, you don't need to go every time a cup knock, you don't need to go every time a tin a cup knock, boom, boom, you want to just run to it. Because I was that kind of person. I just needed to be. And now it's like, no, I can miss that. I can miss it. Because there's a need for true, authentic relationship. Like you said, not the high and by, like, oh God, don't let them stop me to talk because, oh Jesus, Lord, they're going to talk so much. But the really true, authentic relationship to just really have a conversation. And people are surprised when you call them. You said, no, I just called to just to talk, because that's not a norm anymore.
Right.
Great conversations. Anything else? Do we have any questions from anyone? No? Maybe they'll watch it on the replay, but if you're watching this on the replay, don't be afraid to get any help. Go to Caribbean Georgia. We will provide as much information on there, to get the support. We have numbers that you can call. This is a time to get the help. Your mental health and wellness is very, very, very important. And that's the reason why we are taking this time out on a Saturday. That's the reason we're taking this time out to have these conversations, to have these discussions, because we understand and we've all been through something that we all can say these are our experience. We're not coming, yes, we all have professional experience. I'm a mental health coach, getting my master's. I'm a certified peer specialist like Olinda, but we all have our own personal experience. And so we're sharing from our personal experience and, what helped us, and so if you are someone out there, do not, we beg of you, don't, don't live in silence anymore. Get the help that you need. There's so much resources now. Back then they didn't have resources, but now there's so many resources, and you don't even have to identify yourself when you call those numbers. I actually do one of the emotional COVID emotional support hot line. I wish people would call in. you know but yes, there's support out there. There's support out there. So yeah, any
Yeah.
last, go ahead.
And I just want to mention too, this, even with the suicide prevention lifeline, you can actually text. You can if you don't feel comfortable talking, you can text, and they'll respond to you in that way also. Well, I think we are creating a platform, give people an opportunity to hear more about mental health, and it's not something that's going to happen overnight. That folks are just going to embrace this in our community. But I think we've gotten some really good responses, especially at that first meeting we had in February.
Yes.
So I think the more that we talk about these things and we normalize it, people will recognize that they're not alone, that it's okay. It's okay to talk about it, because mental illness can happen to anyone, any race, any socioeconomic, any gender. It's, anyone can at any time in their life can experience something that caused them to have a mental health challenge, whether it's anxiety or grief, or that leads into depression or anything like that. So let's just be realistic and be real. I mean, this is something that exists.
Yes. All right. Any other
Okay, one thing I think that may not have been covered, it's something that I ran into, and mostly is not covered under mental health, and I think it should be. When people constantly shoplift, and what I realize, it is a part of anxiety. And a lot of people don't discuss it at all because they don't think it's a form of mental health. And from watching TV shows and so forth, I realize it is a mental health issue from anxiety and so forth. But a lot of people never talk about this. And from talking to certain folks, I realize it's not even something that is covered out there. Like when they send you to, like, not the counseling, it's like group sessions and stuff. They always send you to group sessions for substance abuse and stuff like that, but not that I think the anxiety or shoplift, because I didn't realize so many people do it, and they don't do it because they want to. They do it because of anxiety, and that is something that's never really talked about in mental health.
Wow.
That's interesting.
Yeah, that's
Yeah,
something to look into. Wow, I never thought of it that way.
right. I know that there's some people that habitually do it.
They,
You know,
they do it.
yeah, they do it habitually, and for some it may be the thrill of doing it and getting away with it. It's a thrill, and it could be the littlest thing. It may not even be something of great value,
And
but
that
the fact that they did it. So again, they're getting some sort of pleasure out of doing it. It's relieving. So and then if there's some people that may be doing it, maybe looking at what they're shoplifting. So there's some people that maybe they went hungry when they were younger, and maybe they're shoplifting just food. They're only shoplifting food, because they're afraid that they're going to go hungry or they're not going to have enough or something.
and they
I
will
don't know. There's probably many different possible reasons why.
they'll be embarrassed to even talk about the thing because it's embarrassing for them, but they don't really realize how to even address it because it's an embarrassing thing. But I never see it really discussed as a mental health thing, but it's out there.
That's an interesting that's interesting to look into. The correlation, the connection between anxiety and shoplifting. That is something to definitely look into.
Even hoarding stuff. There's a show on
Hoarding.
called Hoarding,
Yep. Hoarders,
and
yes.
people don't make that connection. And even how do you even address those kind of embarrassing situations? Because you don't want to tell your friend that you do this. You don't want to tell your family members that you do this. So it's an embarrassing thing, but it's also linked to mental health. So how can somebody address something like that?
And then, you know, you see on the show, whenever you see it on the show, there's always some underlying issue
Yeah.
why they started hoarding. My father died, my mother died, you know, something happened, some trauma occurred, and then they started doing this thing, you know. Yeah,
Yeah.
I mean, it's really interesting.
I,
The
I
brain
watched one
is
on
amazing.
Netflix. Sorry, Olinda, go ahead.
No, I was just saying how amazing the brain is.
Yeah, I watched one on Netflix, and I mean, this person couldn't get through from the kitchen to the living room, and it was I think it was the wife, because that's what the daughter said when he met the wife, and then she had abandonment and all these different things going back to childhood, going back to that same, childhood. And I mean, Jay but he knew where everything was, and I'm thinking, how do you? I mean, it's piled and piled and piled and piled, and they were trying to shut him down, and he was ready to shoot the cop. like seriously, like, you're not coming here, you're not, no, you're not going to do this. So it's like, wow. But there's so many, and that's the reason why I think mental health, we do need to bring it to the forefront, because there's so many facets of it. There's so many different things that connect, and and most of it goes back to trauma or childhood, something that took place in your childhood, or and even now, think about, switching gears just a little bit for 10 minutes, this movement that we have going on with Black Lives Matter. One of the discussion I had this morning, the topic was, raising Black boys in this era, which is, of course, a complete different topic. But even the trauma that's going on right now, what mental, on both sides and everyone, the mental capacity of everyone right now. There's so many different that needs to be studied, but hopefully, we just choose, we pick something, and then we kind of focus on how can we help the community? How can we help people to just really start having the discussion? But I'm really interested in the shoplifting and how it connects with the anxiety. Anyone else?
Yeah.
All right. So listen up, everyone. If you like what you're hearing and all the programs that Caribbean Association of Georgia is bringing to you, go to www.caribbeangeorgia.org and sign up to become a member, where you will be getting emails and you'll be getting information of all the things that are going on with the Caribbean Association of Georgia. So while we might be quarantined, we are still trying to find a way to help our community in different areas, like having discussions such as this, like having the Dear Daddy that we had this last Sunday, like having, what are some other events that we had this
And we like to have fun too. So the
like
DJ
to have
sound
fun.
off.
DJ sound off, man. That was, I
We
had
like
to
to praise the
wait.
Lord
Yes,
with
we
our
had the
gospel
gospel.
concert.
Yeah.
The workout on Tuesday.
Workout, yes,
Oh Lord,
exercise. And
I'm
there's
still
one.
feeling that. I'm still feeling that.
They're coming.
Yes, so just go on the caribbeangeorgia.org. We are, we're nonprofit. We get our funding. Normally our major fundraiser was the festival. That didn't happen this year. So we are in need of funding to continue to do the work that we are doing. And we have so much more in store for you all. So I want to thank you all, everyone that tuned in today. I want to, if you guys do you have any last remarks?
Last remark is to take good care of yourself. Be patient and kind to yourself.
I think you should give out the numbers again for the helpline, especially if they want to talk to someone anonymously.
Okay. The suicide prevention hotline is in the chat box. It's 1-800-273-8255. And that number, they will connect you to a crisis center locally in your area if you are in a crisis. You can find the other numbers on our website, caribbeangeorgia.org, and you can find the COVID support phone number as well as the peer support phone numbers are also listed on our website.
Awesome, awesome. Any last remarks, Mr. Garth?
Just, I'd say to the parents that have young children, just pay close attention to your kids, be aware of the things that they're going through, take it seriously if they're saying negative things. And as a parent, just be a lot more sensitive to the needs of your children. Your children are hurting. They don't understand. They can't comprehend what we're going through with this pandemic and with all that's happening with the Black Lives Matter. Help them to understand, because in their minds it's all confusing. And so reach out to your kids, let them know, tell them how much you love them. Always express your love to your kids. And if they feel loved, they will come to you as a parent and share with you. Your number one job is to train and develop those young lives that God has given you so that they can become one day the same mature parent that they had. They will become who they saw in their lives.
Awesome, awesome, awesome. So on that note, thank you all once again for watching Mental Health and, the Mental Health Forum Lived Experience. So to you all, CAG executive, thank you all so much and have a blessed Saturday. Remember, go to caribbeangeorgia.org for all the information, like our social media, Facebook, Instagram, YouTube. Send us some information. Let us know how we're doing. Thank you.